Welcome, everyone. Another update, another monthly update from Jason Hill on the status of the build of the HX50.
Thanks, Misha. Thanks, Ruben, and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a increasingly busy DC1. For those of you that have been following our progress over the last few months, particularly since just before Christmas, you'll have seen us develop absolutely everything that we need to do to build in-house patterns, in-house molds, and then our own in-house advanced infused carbon fibre fuselages. This is crucial to the success of HX50. It's the underpinning of our structural performance, of our crashworthiness, of our aerodynamics, and of a lot of other key attributes in the helicopter, not to mention, of course, the price point. First, we developed our very first airframe, which was just about the basics of infusion, the basics of fabric handling. Then we produced a second airframe, which was a refinement of that. In the third airframe, we've been on to optimize and perfect the infusion of the outer shell. And then with our fourth airframe that we're going to be talking about today, we then introduced the structural cores and all of the things that you need to turn that monolithic shell into a real aerostructure. So Airframe 1 was the very first attempt at doing all of that, and it was very much about what have you got to do to take dry fabric. It's like trying to stick your shirt to the ceiling. What have you got to do to get the carbon fibre to stick in all the parts of the mould, and then get a vacuum bag over it, and then be able to draw resin all the way around this completely circumferential void using just vacuum. We nailed the ability to hold the fabric in the right place. We got a lot of the infusion strategy right, but it wasn't perfect, as you'd expect. It was the first time we'd done it. So what you can see here is the second iteration of our airframe. Now, one of the most important points to realize here is that first airframe, it was the first time we did everything. It was the first time we cut the kits. It was the first time we used the tools. It was the first time we drew a vacuum. All the bagging technologies and everything else we had to develop to get it to work, we'd got those nailed down by the time we'd built this one. This one was done in 2 to 3 weeks. So a lot of the processes within the organization had started to gel, and we were already able to produce these much quicker. Even though there's no automation at the moment, this is purely done as a prototyping exercise. The other big thing that we did is the first set of structural foams that we had made. We used to fit out the structure, and this was really the first time that we got any real sense of what it's going to be like to be within HX50, the size of the pillars, the size of the structural members that protect you and provide your crash cell, and also it was the first time that we got a real sense of the stiffness of the airframe, because the outer shell that we produced in isolation, of course, has no stiffness, has no strength until it's got all of this stuff, and then the B surfaces on the inside as well. Now, Airframe 3 is by far and away the best one that we've made yet. So this is still an exercise in producing a perfect outer shell. So this is just the outer shell, the outer skin of the airframe. But as you can see now, with the improved bootlaces, with the improved intensifiers, all of the details that you need to create the recesses for the doors so that the doors fit flush with the fuselage and maintain that clean aerodynamic shape were captured perfectly. We also managed to get the infusion almost perfect. There was only a couple of tiny little dry spots up here, which were purely because we clamped down a little bit too hard on how we simplified the resin distribution and the infusion approach. So there's still more work to be done on this, but the very next step, of course, is to start building in the foams, put the B surfaces in, and make Airframe 4. And that is what we've been working on over the course of this month. So let's go back and have a look at some of the ingredients that have gone into building Airframe 4 over the course of the last 4 weeks or so. The way that a composite structure works is all of the loads are carried by the skins, but something has to position the skins of the structure in the right place. To do that, we generally use trapped foam cores. All of these foam cores are manufactured in-house by us down at DC2 on our gantry mill. And so what we've been doing over the course of the last month is developing optimized machining strategies that enable us to produce these things as quickly as possibly, as accurately as possible, and with the least possible weight. We've been developing with our foam suppliers a moldable solution, which allows us essentially to take the same foam chemistry, but take the raw ingredients for that and then reaction injection mold that into molds that are the form of the beams that we need, or the foam cores that we need to put inside the structure. That reduces the cost of producing exactly the same thing to exactly the same specification by about a factor of 100. This little block of foam here has exactly the same chemistry as its big block brother, but this is in fact sold to us in individual chemical parts. And then what you can see here is these are a couple of the examples of the trials that we did while we were developing the infusion strategies for the trapped core structures that we needed to produce Airframe 4. Airframe 4 is the first of the airframes that is essentially a full aerostructure. So we've produced over the course of the last 2 weeks, really. We've been taking our time with this one because there's a lot of variables at play. Over the course of the last week, we've developed a full set of structural cores using the new machining methods. We've templated and laminated the A surfaces, the cores, the B surfaces. We've mastered the way that you hold the structural cores in place within the tools. We've dealt with the additional challenges of bagging this more complicated shape. We've dealt with a spider's web of plumbing that's been required to get all of the resin and all of the vacuum lines into the structure to be able to produce this in a single piece. And all of those things have come out really well. They've worked really nicely. Still a couple of little things that we can improve, but that's worked really great. The infusion strategy does need a little bit of improvement. And then, with the exception of one minor issue that we had last night with a vacuum leak, we've essentially infused and produced Airframe 4 today. The guys were pulling this out of the molds today. There's a bunch of other work that's been going on in the background. We also have been doing an awful lot of work on optimizing the approach to door locking and the door locking mechanism. So Martin's been working hard on developing a range of locking mechanisms, only in prototype form at the moment. They'll be integrated much more carefully with the doors as we go on. This is a model board based tool, and you can start to see immediately some of the challenges you've got with door geometry when you look at the extreme curvature that you've got towards the top and bottom of the door to conform to HX50's very, very curved fuselage. We've got a range of seals that we want to examine just to get the right balance between airward, sort of tight leak protection, make sure that you don't get leaks in there, keep the wind and the drafts out there, but not require such large forces to clamp these seals shut that the door locking mechanism starts to become cumbersome. Okay, so we gave you a little update a little while ago about the tail section of HX50. We've now got a stable design for the prototype tail section. There's some optimization still going on, but fundamentally we're ready to prototype that now. So let's talk about GT50 and the engine program. The way we develop this engine is a very, very systematic approach to design, verify, test, and refine. If I give you some examples of some of the things that have been going on over the course of the last month. I introduced last month that we'd been doing a lot of work on the front end of the engine. The front end of the engine is the primary load path that carries all of the engine loads into the structure and vice versa. We've been developing a refined anti-ice system, a refined core wash system, and we've been developing the blow-through doors that allow your engine to keep breathing if the filter gets blocked. Again, because we're vertically integrated, while Craig has been optimizing the design, we've frozen the design and we've been producing the first specimens of these gears to develop all of the processes that we need to be able to produce this. So what you can see here is the drive shaft out of the engine. These two bevel gears are the bevel set that sit at the front of the engine and essentially take the drive from the transmission shaft under the engine and then up into the main rotor gearbox. This is the drive shaft. So this validates the fact we can make lightweight, high performance, very, very thin walled shafts with the necessary splined ends and timing features on the end. Is as the signal passes, if you look at the screen, as the load passes, we get a detection and then it goes back up again. Okay? And it's that detection that the software counts, and that's what gives you both your speed sensing and then the difference of that in relation to a fixed sensor is what gives you your torque reading as well. Let's talk briefly about the digital cockpit, some of the work that's gone into refining the user interface, refining the connectivity with electronic flight book apps, the latest functions in the IPI, and the latest styling refinements on that cockpit and user interface. Those activities have now been parked temporarily while we focus on the detail that goes behind the scenes in the UI. Eric himself is now focused almost entirely on moving the software that we've got to target hardware. As you're aware, we're building a 350,000 square foot production facility to allow us to build 500 HX50s a year, ramping up sometime later as and when required. The planners have now given us a commitment that they will make a final decision on the planning application by the 9th of May. Myself and Mark and his team are very focused at the moment on producing all of the procuring all of the production equipment we need to produce this vast array of components to the right standard, to the right quality, in the right volumes. So with all of this stuff going on, it should come as no surprise that sales continue to be extremely strong. I think we approached 50 sales since the last AMA. We exceeded 50 sales since the last AMA. We're in 56 countries. We've now sold 637 X's and 141 C's. We still have a growing sales pipeline of people that are just waiting for their own criteria to be hit before they jump in. So there's never been a better time to join us and get on board with what we're doing here at the company.